Hello everyone, welcome to some quarantine content. Still quarantined, not much stuff you can do with cars, just doing some kind of casual driving. And I've been asked a couple times on kind of how I make my videos and the camera gear I use, so why not just make a video on everything I use that's in my bag. Let's get into it. So I actually have 4 cameras that I've used on this channel, and I still own all 4. I only use 1 or 2 now for the current videos, but I'm gonna go through all 4 and kind of tell you why I bought them and what I like about them. And just so you know, as we're going through this, I will be showing a bunch of B-roll of footage I shot on whatever camera I'm talking about. So as I'm speaking about it, you'll see B-roll for that, so you can kind of make your own opinions on if you like the video or not. So this is the very first camera I purchased. Now I gotta take you back to 2014 for this one. This is an action cam, it's a Sony action cam. HDR-AX100V, great naming by Sony. So I gotta take you back to 2014, I just graduated grad school. I was just about to buy the WRX and I didn't really have any money. I had student loans I still had to pay off. So I can only afford essentially one camera that had to do it all. So I knew it had to be an action cam, so I knew I was gonna strap it to the car and stuff. And then essentially just had to look at the features I wanted. So you're probably asking, well, why didn't I buy a GoPro? Well, that's a good question. I was about to buy a GoPro, but then this came out, I think at the same time, right when I was about to buy the GoPro. So why did I pick this over that? Well, this and the GoPro both had 1080p up to 60 FPS recording, which is great. That's what I wanted. There were 2 things this had, the GoPro didn't at the time, that made me pick this over that. First thing was high bitrate recording. It recorded up to 50 megabits per second. Why that's important for anybody that doesn't understand what megabits per second is. All that means is the higher the bit rate, the higher the quality of your video. So in 1080p, the higher the quality of that 1080p is what that typically means. There's just more data packed into that 1080p signal. And the GoPro, I don't think had that high of a bit rate recording at the time. And then secondly, this had optical image stabilization. Again, for anybody that doesn't understand that, that is just the sensor inside this thing actually floats a little bit and kind of moves. So when you have some shake in the camera, it floats and kind of mitigates all that shake so that your footage looks a lot smoother. So because of those 2 features, really, I bought this instead. Really happy with it. The only downfall I would say is that it didn't have a screen that showed what you were actually shooting. So you had to use an app on your phone that could connect via Wi-Fi to see to line up your shots. And the app absolutely sucks. It would basically close every time you locked your phone. So this was a struggle for about 1.5 years. I think I used solely this to get all my shots. It worked great. It just was a struggle to kind of get my shots in place. But this was the first camera, and I still use this a ton today because it's the only action cam I own. So I stick this all the time to the car and still get great 1080p footage out of this for whatever I need. All right, so about 1.5 years later, I knew I needed another camera because I just got sick of lining that up with my phone. I needed something that I can just point and shoot, had a screen, something I can do easily. And again, I still had the new car payments, the student loan payments, and couldn't afford much. So I went with something super, super cheap, but just got it done. This did everything I needed. So I needed something just like this, but with a screen. So for $199, which was pretty cheap, brand new, was this guy, a camcorder. Yes, I bought a camcorder. Don't worry, it gets a little better than this later on. But this is a Sony camcorder. It is the Sony HDR-CX405. And it is basically like a cheap 1080p camcorder. 1080p, it was basically exactly what this is, which is why this had everything I wanted. 1080p, 60 FPS, high bitrate recording, and again, 60 FPS so you can slow mode if you need to. Had the high bitrate and it has optical image stabilization just like that. One real difference, this doesn't go slight as wide as this does, just because action cams have a very wide angle. And this does have a zoom. So this is pretty much that action cam with a screen, and it fulfilled everything I needed at the time. And this really was probably the best camera I bought for this channel. Not that it is the best camera that I use, but it was the best camera I bought for the time of the channel because I was getting sick of kind of making videos with this thing that I just wouldn't want to go outside and do whatever I wanted to do and make a video with that because it was such a struggle. With this, it was so simple. I just picked it up and started shooting whatever I wanted to shoot and got a lot of good videos out of this and just got, I don't know, it was just a great camera and the camera I needed for the time. Still use this a little bit, I'll talk about that at the end, but let's move on to the next camera. Okay, so fast forward to probably around 2017, I would say. I started getting into videography as a hobby. I thought it was really cool. My hobbies, I kind of go all in for, like cars. When I start liking what I'm doing, I start getting really into it. So I started doing a lot of researching, and I wanted a really good camera, something that interchangeable lenses, mirrorless camera, just a much higher quality. So that is why I went with this camera. This is the Panasonic G7, interchangeable lens, mirrorless camera, micro four thirds, shoots 4K 30 FPS and up to 1080p 60 FPS. And after all my research, this is what I ended up on because it was pretty inexpensive, but would be a great upgrade for the channel. And additionally, I wanted to get some better mic quality. The camcorder did not have a mic input, so you had to use that mic, but this had a mic input, so I could finally buy some mics and get better quality out of that as well. So of all 4 cameras that I use, I haven't talked about the 4th one yet, this probably has the best image because it has the largest sensor of all my cameras. A bigger sensor means more light can get in, usually results in a better picture. You can also get that depth of field or that bokeh. However, this was the worst camera purchase I made for this channel. Why is it the worst? Because this doesn't fit my needs. There's 2 big flaws in this, which really just made shooting videos for my channel so bad. This, unlike the other 2 cameras over there, does not have image stabilization. So this has nothing, no IBIS, in-body image stabilization. So all the footage was very shaky. If you don't have a gimbal or something, I mean, you would just hold this camera and you can see all the minor handshakes that you make coming through in all of your footage. And yes, that bugged me and it was annoying and I didn't like how it turned out, but that wasn't even the worst part about this. This camera's autofocus is absolutely atrocious. This shoots in 1080p and 4K. In 1080p, it's very bad. In 4K, I mean, it's horrible. You cannot rely on this autofocus. I would shoot with this camera, and I mean, I feel like 50, 60, 70% of my shots were just out of focus. And even when you move something in the shot and then out of the shot, I mean, it would take forever to grab focus, like 5, 6, 7 seconds to grab focus on what you wanted it to grab, which was very unfortunate. With the camcorder and the action cam, the sensors are so small that your depth of field is so large that everything's almost always in focus. Plus camcorders just have better autofocus typically as well. So this is a fantastic camera for someone who wants to set it on a tripod and drill in manual focus every time. Fantastic. I've actually shot videos where I have put this on a tripod and drilled in manual focus, and it's phenomenal. You get great bokeh, it looks amazing, it's great quality, but running and gunning with this is pretty much impossible. I learned my lesson. I didn't do enough research on that part of it, and that's why I pretty much don't really use this camera anymore and I need to sell it. Again, fantastic camera if you know what you're doing with it and if you're kind of have this thing stabilized and drilling in focus, but since I'm not doing that type of stuff, it didn't work out for me. And to talk about my last camera, I need to take this camera that I just complained about, put it on the tripod and film myself because I've been filming this whole thing with my 4th camera, and so let me grab that right now. All right, I now have the Panasonic G7 on the tripod, so it's stabilized and hopefully the focus is dialed in. So now I can talk about my last camera I bought. So basically what I wanted for my last camera is I wanted a combination of what the G7 had to offer, which is the 4K plus a lot of the manual adjustments you can do with that, which is like aperture, shutter speed, ISO, etc., as well mixed with my camcorder, which is the optical image stabilization, the easy autofocus, the ease of use. So what I did is I went and purchased this. And yes, this is another camcorder, but it is a special camcorder. This is the Sony AX53. It shoots in 4K, but it also shoots in 1080p at 120 FPS, which means you can slow that down. I shoot most of my stuff in 30 FPS, which means I can slow this down 4 times. If you recall in one of my previous videos, my 370Z mini burnout, I filmed in 1080p at 120 FPS and slowed that down. So how is this a combination of the Panasonic G7 plus that camcorder? Well, like I said, it has the 4K, but it also has all the manual adjustments. It has the aperture adjustments, it has the ISO adjustments, it has the shutter speed adjustments, which you can do in this camera, which is very nice. So it basically acts like all the adjustments you can get in a lot of mirrorless cameras. This does have a built-in lens, so not interchangeable lens, obviously, but you can still zoom with it, and it's a pretty good lens. But then it also has the features I loved about this little camcorder. First is that this has a tiny sensor, and a tiny sensor is typically not good. I still prefer larger sensors. They usually have better video quality, but a tiny sensor means a larger depth of field. I don't really need the shallow depth of field, and larger depth of field means a lot of things are almost always in focus, which is nice. And on top of that, this is a Sony camera. Sony typically has some pretty good autofocus, so you have the large depth of field and the autofocus, so I'm not worried about focus like I was on the Panasonic G7. And secondly, I talked about on Panasonic was the stabilization, which was very bad. This stabilization is absolutely incredible on this camera. Sony actually calls this their boss stabilization. It's balanced optical steady shot, I believe it says. And on their website, they actually advertise it as a built-in gimbal, and I kind of believe them because it is absolutely incredible what this thing can do. I'll show some footage right here. You can see that the sensor actually floats inside of the body of this camera. So when this thing is shaking or moving, the sensor kind of floats around and makes everything look steady. And that is fantastic when I do a lot of in-car shots and I stick this to a windshield. The car hits bumps, it's always vibrating, and this takes out all of that, and it's absolutely incredible. And right here, I'll show you me running with this camera with the stabilization turned on and the stabilization turned off, and you will see that it's pretty much a night and day difference with how good the stabilization is on this and that built-in gimbal that Sony calls it. So that's pretty much it for my 4 cameras. I absolutely love this thing. I've had it for I think a little over a year, and I use this for almost all of my shooting. When it comes to secondary cameras, I typically use my Sony action cam, so Sony GoPro I call it sometimes, for anything where I gotta stick that to a car. Occasionally I'll use this camcorder if I need another type of B-roll cam, or just a second camera setup where I don't wanna use the GoPro, and I almost never use my Panasonic G7 because of what I mentioned, using it right now. But essentially I probably will sell that and get rid of that, and I'm actually looking at buying a new GoPro so I can get 4K 60 FPS GoPro footage for when I want to stick it to a car for stuff like autocross. And plus the new GoPro actually has some really good stabilization, so that will be nice to have as well. All right, lastly, let's just real quick go over the microphone setups I use. Audio quality is very important in a lot of online videos that you make. I never really thought about it in the beginning because I was so new to it, but now I think about it all the time. With these first 2 cameras I used, the action cam, I didn't think about audio at the time, so I never used a microphone for that, even though it has an input. The first camcorder I bought didn't have a mic input, so I couldn't use it. When I got the Panasonic G7 is when I started looking at audio quality and pretty much caring about it. So the first thing I bought, which almost every YouTuber I feel like has, is a Video Micro, I believe it's called, by Rode. It's a pretty good mic. The 2 issues I have with it is that it is directional, which is fine. They advertise it as directional, so you have to kind of be talking into it for it to pick you up well. It only comes from this cone right here. So when I'm pointing this at something, I'm talking behind the camera, it doesn't pick me up too well, is what it is. And the second issue I have with it is after about 6 to 8 feet, it kind of drops off where you go from really good sounding audio to just your typical average sounding audio, I would say. It sounds like it's almost being recorded on a normal mic on a camera. So when you're further away, it still picks you up and it's fine, but it kind of just sounds normal instead of very good. But at least you get this windshield as well, so when you take it outside, you don't get wind noise. You will typically get wind noise if you just use the microphone built into a camera. And lastly is this little guy that you may have seen clipped to me. I've been using much more in more recent videos. I bought this I think like a year ago, and this was one of the best purchases I ever made for the channel. It's called the Rode Wireless Go. So this is basically a wireless audio lab in a very compact form factor. So you can see it's a little square. There's a receiver and a transmitter. The receiver is on the camera right now and it mounts right into the hot shoe of any camera. And then this you stick on you, and what you do is this actually has its own built-in microphone. You can talk to it. I think in my 5-year WRX video, you can clip it right to your shirt. I clipped it to my shirt and I talked right into it. And it's phenomenal because you can walk around wherever you want to go within like 100 yards of line of sight and it'll still pick up. So I can walk around and shoot that video really easily, shoot any video I want really easily with this just clipped. I don't have to worry about anything. Now, besides having a microphone built into this, it also has a 3.5mm jack that you can plug your own lav mic into, which is what I do now. When I first got this, I didn't do that, but I do it now, and basically the reason why is because this thing, it's light, but when you clip it onto your shirt kind of falls in all these directions and it moves around a lot. It was just a little more uncomfortable and it would kind of rub and create some audio you didn't want. So what I do is I plug in my own lav, I run it under my shirt. The wire for it is right here. So it's nice. I just clip this to my belt, put it in my pocket, do whatever, and I put the excess cord in my pocket as well. And then I have a wireless lav mic, and this wireless lav is like a $20 lav mic off Amazon. I think it was called like the Purple Panda mic, and it's actually pretty good. It got good reviews. I think it sounds pretty good. But this was a phenomenal purchase because now I can have wireless, high quality audio, and audio is so important in YouTube videos, at least I think so. So I can walk around and always have good audio. So anyway, that's my setup. I hope you enjoyed this kind of non-car video. We'll get back into the car videos when quarantine's over. My final thoughts real quick on my cameras. Again, I'm gonna probably sell my Panasonic G7. These two cameras here, the cheap $199 camcorder and this action cam, both still shoot good 1080p video, and I looked on eBay and they're both about 60 to 70 bucks used. So let me say that I think cell phone videos or cell phone camera quality is very good nowadays. With iPhones, I have a Pixel, but almost all of them are very, very good quality. They're probably, I would say, better quality than these two cameras typically, especially with the software involved and how good they've gotten. So if you want to start a YouTube channel and don't want to spend money, I would say 100% use your phone. It is a great thing to use and the quality is so good. At the time, cell phone quality was not as good, so I bought these. But I would say that since these are both $60 to $70 used on eBay, if you just want a B camera, like a B-roll camera, use your cell phone as your A camera and a B camera, or if you just don't want to use your cell phone because you don't want it to fall, break, or anything, I mean, $70, 60, 70 bucks, these are pretty good deals, especially this thing. If you just want to shoot with something that's not your cell phone for 60 to 70 bucks and 1080p and pretty good quality, I think this is the way to go. And if you have it out and you drop it and you break it on the sidewalk, it was 60 to 70 bucks. It wasn't your $800 phone that you have in your pocket. And then the Sony AX53, the 4K camcorder, I'm gonna keep using this for a while, like I might have already said, because this thing is just phenomenal. I love the quality out of it and I love the ease of use. So that wraps it up. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this kind of quarantine content because I had nothing else to film, nothing car related, so why not? I think it's fun to talk about this stuff. Hope you found it interesting. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.